part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright. You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to the Krypton Report with a very special episode. That's right. It is I, your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, the Man of Tomorrow. And with me today is not James. Nope. I have with me the hardest working man in comics. That's right. This man and I met many years ago, and we'll get to that fun story. But I have Mr. Victor Danbridge. How are you doing, Victor?
I'm good. Man, has it really been that long? It has, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's been like seven years.
Oh, where does the time go? Okay.
Yeah, right. Because I remember because it's right after I moved back. And so Victor and I met at AMC Linux.
Right.
We both were some of those suckers that went to see Tusk in theaters, that Kevin Smith movie. And I swear there was you.
I think it was like 5 of us total.
my ex-brother-in-law and like 2 other people. And it was in a larger room too.
Yeah.
And we were like, all right, Kevin Smith movie. We're like, okay. I didn't have any expectations going in.
Right.
I didn't know how I felt when I left.
I mean, it's a choice. I'm not gonna lie, I do want Kevin to return back to wrap up his trilogy. I feel like, as a longtime fan, we deserve that. Like, yeah. I want Moose Jaws really bad. So I don't care how bad it might be. I just want to see it.
So my issue, and this is not the Tusk podcast, I promise people. My issue with it was I thought it started well.
Right.
And then, having seen Red State.
Right.
And seeing where Kevin went with it. And I never listened to the podcast that he did about Tusk because I didn't want to spoil everything.
Okay.
Because there's a podcast he did for Smodcast.
Right.
And basically it's how they pitch the movie to each other and kind of come up with the whole idea. And then I just remember sitting there thinking, like, you really could have had something much like the way you did Red State that kind of was really out of your wheelhouse.
Right.
But it's like you just went for like the, what the, like.
Well, I think, again, like you said, this isn't the Tusk podcast, but I do think that there was something interesting that he was playing with that I think with Red State, he had something he wanted to say, and Tusk was just something that he could do. And that becomes something a little different. We'll get into that even as to how I approach being a creator, that sometimes there's a difference between when I have something I want to say versus, oh yeah, I can do that. And what ends up coming out from there. That's
a very, very good way of segueing into things. And we'll get there, but I wanted to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
Have you watched Clerks 3 yet?
Of course. I've seen it. I saw it at a special screening when Fandango was doing it that first week of release. Yeah. And did you see it?
I actually bought it on Amazon.
Okay.
Because it came out relatively quick.
It did.
And I bought it because I wanted to go see it, the Fandango thing. Well, it just couldn't get the scheduling to work out. Gotcha. And then I was going to visit my co-host James with our buddy Brian. And so I just bought it digitally so the 3 of us could just chill at his place and watch it together.
Gotcha.
And we did. And I went in expecting something, fun. But at the same time, I was kind of apprehensive about it because I was like, I feel like you're kind of repeating yourself with the way you did with Zach and Miri.
Okay.
With kind of the behind the scenes of how you made things. But I was actually very blown away with Clerks 3.
Absolutely. Humble brag, I am friends with Brian O'Halloran, and after I watched the movie, I shot like a really quick video and sent it to him, basically cussing him out for the feels that he gave me with this movie. And I'm excited because I'll actually get to see him first at Fan Expo San Francisco, and then a week later he'll be here in Columbus for GalaxyCon. So I definitely expect to have some words with him, and we're going to talk about that for sure.
Yeah. So we started this podcast quickly, but it's just funny how people meet. Now,
of course,
what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of keep a little bit of the mystery of Victor, but
Okay.
at the same time. So, Victor, you like comics.
A little bit.
Obviously. What got you into comics?
So,
like, where did your love for the page and the drawings and stuff, where did that start?
It's so funny, to talk about this with the time frame of things. Obviously, we're recording this post the passing of the great Kevin Conroy, who was the voice of Batman, and it's around like that time. Like people don't understand, and I guess in this day and age they really wouldn't, but how like insane the course of like 1991, 1992 really kind of was when it comes to the resurgence of comics. I was a guy that loved pop culture. I didn't like to read a lot as a kid, but pop culture stuff I was all about. Movies, cartoons, all that jazz, all day. So I definitely went to see the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman movie. I had seen Superman 1, 2, and 4 like on repeat. 3 not so much because I didn't really like 3. But anytime
like 3.
yeah, like that's I'm willing to say like 4 is my favorite, and I know it's a bad movie, but it's still my favorite one.
Tell me why, real quick. Tell me why.
Because it's the one that I had immediate like connection to. Like that's the one that I saw the most often. It was always available, and I just enjoyed it.
Was
and
it always available because it was on TV? It felt like every day,
all the time. Like,
thank you.
Yes.
That's what I've been saying, is because I have a love for that one as well. Because I feel like every time I turn on the TV or every time I was at my grandparents' house,
that was on.
It was on.
Yeah. Chances are your grandparents probably recorded it and they just played it every time you came over. But it was a genius move.
Probably.
But okay, so in that movie in particular, Solar Man has this phrase, must destroy Superman. And the idea of killing Superman was just something that I was always like, man, you can't kill Superman. Like, that's not possible. Until, fateful day, they announced in the news that they're planning to kill Superman. And I'm like, wait, what? How are you going to kill Superman? And that is the impetus. That's the spark for me getting into comics, was the Death of Superman announcement. I was like, I want to read that. Like, show me this one. I want to read it. I'm in. Let's go. And the very next day, my mom started buying me comic books because, like I said, I wasn't much of a reader. So the announcement that I wanted to read anything, she was jumping all over. She was like, I'm getting it. Whatever it is, I'm getting it. 2-3 copies of it. Like, I don't even care. And, we start with reading, comics in general, because the Death of Superman doesn't come out till 92. And this, I think they announced this in like 91, late 91, maybe early 1992.
It feels right. It feels right.
Like, I think that's about the time frame, but at the same time, we're looking at the launch of X-Men #1 with Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. You've got your X-Force. You've got all these other titles that are launching. You've got the X-Men cartoon that comes out. Batman the Animated Series comes out. So like in this moment where I'm like, hey, I want to read comics. All of a sudden, all of these comic book things happen. And there's some of the biggest happenings in comics. 92, you also have the Image Revolution, where the 7 guys leave Marvel and DC and they start Image. And, it becomes like this huge moment that everything that I could ever want as a young 10-year-old is right there. And so like 92 is such a pivotal year for me when it comes to pop culture and things like that. And that is literally, that's my genesis. That's my origin story.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, so a quick side story. I met Chris Claremont back when they had Mid-Ohio Con.
Yes.
2008-ish, 9-ish, somewhere in there. I'd have to look exactly because some of that time is kind of a blur. A lot of
that
kind of went by in that time period. But I think it was 2008. That sounds good. And I knew who he was, but I didn't know to the depth of who he was.
Wow. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then later when I was like, oh my gosh, because I kind of was like digging back through his stuff, and I was like, oh my, he created, like I knew he wrote X-Men and what he had done, but I didn't realize all the characters he had created.
Yeah.
And I was just like, holy cow. So the death of Superman, we are recording this right after they released the big 30th anniversary. Did you get a chance to read that yet?
Of course. I definitely read it for my show Black, White, and Red All Over.
And just a quick idea. What'd you think of it? Just a quick.
So I was excited, like off rip, just to read it to see what they were going to do. I will say that now that I am a comic book creator myself, I would have done some things a little differently in terms of which order they had the stories. But otherwise, I mean, it's a very 1990s, it's a classic nostalgia sort of piece. So it tickled that button for me perfectly.
I will agree with you on that. And I really like the stories.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish maybe there's another one or two in there,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a lost story from Funeral for a Friend, a lost story from Reign of the Superman. And I just, the main, news story that was there.
Yeah. I
liked it,
mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I don't want to feel like, oh, it could have been stronger. But I was reading, I was like, could you imagine if this had happened in a way that it was John fighting this new creature parallel
Mm-hmm.
with the death of Superman? So you're kind of telling two different stories at the same time, where John found out, you have a flashback to him finding out about his dad, and then him fighting this doomsday himself. And I think there could have been something cool there. It was good.
Right.
I just feel
you
like
just want it more, and I totally understand that.
And it went quick, and I was like, I need to sit with it and read it again.
Well, from that fan standpoint, I totally agree, especially considering how big the death of Superman as a story was, and the idea that we are supposed to recap its 30th anniversary in just like a single issue is kind of crazy. You're like, no, this should be like a huge month-long, event of books on books on books on books that kind of harken back to this, because that's what it was for us when it first came out. Like, it was like, just the death alone was like 7 issues long.
Yeah.
And that's huge. Like, that's a lot of content to have this story take place. So to have that 30th anniversary just kind of be like, it's like 64 pages maybe. That it just wasn't enough because we wanted so much more of it.
Which one of their shorts was your favorite?
The one with his parents. That was definitely my favorite. That was the one. It was emotional in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And I don't even know why I wasn't prepared for it, but I just wasn't.
I get that. Maybe because you were reading it now as a parent.
Definitely that, man. I think, you know what? You're absolutely right. That changed my perspective completely. Because I remember, when I first read it and seeing what happens to Pa Kent, you're like, oh, sweet old man. Now I'm like, that would have been me. That would have been me. I would have keeled over. Like, not my baby. Not my baby.
Yep. Oh, that's why there's certain things that hit me differently that previously I watched or whatever. And then you're just like, okay, here's a completely crazy example.
Yeah.
My wife showed our kids the Parent Trap the other night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she was showing him the Lindsay Lohan one.
Okay.
And I came in, I sat down, I was like, oh, I haven't seen that in years. I was like, I grew up watching the old one with my grandma. And then I'm sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden, like, the scene of like the reveal of like the dad kind of meeting his daughter for the first time. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, no, I couldn't do this. I'm like, how could you let your kid? And then I'm like, come here, son. I just grabbed my son. I'm like, I love you, boy.
There's no way. Yeah.
But I will say, I really did like that. But the one that I liked the most, was the Steel one.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
And because to me, the character of Steel has always reflected kind of like the completion of Superman's mission of influencing people and having people aspire to be better.
Right.
Maybe, and in this one, he doesn't have the suit. He's not Steel per se. He's John Henry running around helping people.
Just trying to help as much as he can.
And then that is like what Superman always tried to show.
Absolutely.
Was to help people. So like that one just got me because I'm like, that is always, I feel like, what the whole point of Superman's character is.
1,000,000% agree with that. That's a dope one. That was a really good one.
My daughter popped in.
It's like, did you say Superman? I want to talk about Superman.
Well, I will say this: my daughter is amazing. She's the best person to watch a comic book movie with.
Love that.
When we saw Black Adam and the post credit scene popped up. This is my friend Victor. You can say hi.
Hi.
No, I will show you in a minute. Let me finish this, okay? Go hang out with mommy. Okay? You don't know where it's at. We're sitting there in the theater and the post credit scene of Black Adam.
Right. And
she is the loudest person in the theater cheering. Louder than, like, bigger than me.
And I love it.
And then yesterday when we saw Wakanda Forever, she's sitting on my lap, and then at one of the opening scenes, she gets up and crosses her arms.
Love it.
And has her head down, and she asked me to buy her a shirt because we were going to see the movie, and she's like, "But I don't have any Marvel shirts, Daddy."
Gotta fix that.
And I was like, all right. So we stopped at the store, and I got her one, and she wanted the Wakanda Forever one that matched her brother.
Love it.
And she's sitting there, and I'm like, you're the best. She's fun.
I love it. Absolutely love it. That's the way it's supposed to be.
So Superman, Death of Superman is what got you into
yes.
comics. Let's ask, if you had to pick top 3 comic book characters that you love the most?
Oh man.
I know it's hard. Okay, I asked the tough questions.
That I didn't create.
Yeah, that you didn't create.
Okay, all right. Okay. I'm gonna say okay, this is a trio. Okay, so Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans, is my favorite comic book character of all time. Like, awesome. I love Black Bolt. And it's funny because I owe my love of him to my dad, who was the first person to introduce me to Black Bolt, and he did it in the worst way possible. Okay, so mind you, this is me and my little brother. We're in the heart of X-Men 90s culture. The X-Men are the coolest things ever. We love them. Like, my brother's got this Wolverine toy, I've got this Gambit toy, and we're like playing with it. We're like 10 and 7 years old respectively. And all of a sudden, my dad whips out this Black Bolt figure. I didn't even know they had toys of Black Bolt back then, but they totally did.
I feel like they did, and with that one run, where
yes,
they made every character possible,
every single last one. So he whips out Black Bolt, and we're like, "Who is this guy?" And he starts telling us his powers, and we're like, "That's cheating! Like, there's no way this guy can't do all of that." No, like, there's no way. He's like, "No, I'm telling you, he can do that. He can beat up the Hulk, and he can do that." And we're like, "Nah, forget this guy." And I remember hating Black Bolt for years and years and years and years and years, just because my dad beat us with this character that we didn't know anything about. And then you had the Marvel Knights Inhuman series written by Paul Jenkins and art by Jay Lee. And I remember begrudgingly picking that up, and I read it and immediately fell in love with Black Bolt. Like, the scale of his thoughtfulness, what he has to do every night to make sure that he doesn't endanger everyone else by speaking in his sleep. Like, it was just to me, it was the idea of having a guy that has this great power that is also his greatest weakness, like, all at the same time. And the juxtaposition of the two, I was just like, that's beautiful. Like, I think that's so perfect for humanity, because there's so many things that, we all think like, oh, this is going to be the sweetest thing, and this is my superpower, but it could so easily be the thing that brings you down because you don't wield it correctly, or you don't figure out, how to use it around other people well, like, all these different things. I fell in love with it. Absolutely amazing. Again, shout out to the showcase of Namor in that one, because he had a very pivotal part, and I loved it as well. Okay, so Black Bolt definitely would be one of my favorites. I would also put up Wonder Woman. I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan. So much so that, if I'm being honest, I have despised her 2 solo movies because I don't feel like they are great representations of who she is as a character.
That's cool. I mean, and I say that because we just recently been rewatching the movies.
Okay.
Like all of them, like Marvel and DC, because my son, he'll be like, "Daddy, I remember that, but I don't remember it real well." So we just started rewatching.
I'll watch it again.
And we were watching the original, Wonder Woman, and we were talking about like how it's such a better movie than what they did in 1984.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about it, and I was like, I do really like this movie. And I was like, the first one, Wonder Woman. And I'm like, I really don't like. And then I pitched my idea to my wife, what I would have done for Wonder Woman 2.
Ooh.
And she's like, well, yeah. I'm like, and it just that movie does not like out of all the DC movies, Wonder Woman 84 sits the worst with me.
I get that because it's such a departure from anything that I think Diana would be like in any way, shape, or form. Like I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan, and my idea of Diana is someone who is self-strong, and there's so much of 1984 that makes her just oddly diminished and almost like I don't know, like violently dark in that movie. And
I feel, if the movie was like Wonder Woman 1940s,
that might have been better.
You know, like it's just 20 years later, and 20 years to her is nothing.
Right.
And the fact that it's like her, you could say, being more upset because we're in World War II, and she's like, I thought I just put an end to this.
Right. That would have been so much better. So much better. But
that movie, yeah, we're gonna do a rewatch of that for our podcast. Do like a commentary on this. I don't want to say too much, but that one I did not. It did not set with me well, and I'm gonna pitch this to you real quick here.
Yeah.
This is my acting theory with DC films.
Okay.
That Wonder Woman, Man of Steel, Suicide Squad, BVS, and Zack Snyder's Justice League are all post-crisis or pre-crisis movies.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Because they put Ezra Miller's Flash in the Crisis on the CW.
Right.
Which means it's connected, and since he disappeared, that means his Earth was destroyed, and then it was rebuilt, and then theatrical Justice League, aka Justice League, and Aquaman and 84 and Shazam and Black Adam and The Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey are all post-crisis, and that's how I explain the little shifts in character, the little shifts in tone, and everything, and little things that don't quite line up. You know,
I like that
because, you know, I am big on continuity.
Right.
And the fact that I feel like Wonder Woman 84 undid any continuity that had ever been created.
Gosh.
But as long as you look at it through that paradigm of thought about the being post-crisis, it's like, okay.
It works. Good job.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use that headcanon myself now. Thank you.
It makes it so much happier that you don't get mad when things don't like. You're like, oh, but it's post-crisis.
Yeah, it's post-crisis. It's fine. It's fine.
And there's evidence for there. But, so who would be your third?
My third, man, that's tough. In many ways, I'll just go for it. Superman. Superman would be my third.
There's no reason to argue with that. I mean, it makes sense. Like, yeah. It's to me, Superman is without him being like the top, you don't have the scale of creating the different levels of the different heroes.
That is so true.
Being, you can't get an anti-hero if you don't understand what the hero is.
Right.
Or, anything else. So it makes sense. So now, last question until we'll get into some of the, actually I got two more small ones for you.
What you got?
One, who's your favorite X-Man?
Gambit. Gambit has been my favorite forever.
That makes sense. No, that's simple. Mine was always Cyclops. I loved Cyclops.
You like the leaders? Nothing wrong with that.
It's a trait of mine. I am like that in everything till we get to Star Wars.
Okay.
In every type of thing, I'm always like the true blue leader, good guy, And then when you get to Star Wars, I'm like Darth Vader. He's the best.
Vader, like that's not even like a turnaround. Like, oh, I like the rogue. You're like, no, I like the bad guy. Give me the bad guy.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I don't know what's wrong with me. What has been your favorite since we're comic book film of this year?
Ooh, of this year?
Yeah, we'll just do this year. It's too many to go into whole depth, but just
that's more than fair. I would say, I mean, it's still fresh for me, but Wakanda Forever is definitely my favorite of the year. I think that what they did with the constraints that they had, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
I posed the question to my wife just for discussion's sake after we left the theater. My question was this the right way to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Should they have done it set during the blip so they didn't have to really dig into the death of Chadwick, or should they have recast? Those were like and I wanted to hear her thoughts, and she was like, no, this was the right way.
I have to admit, I did like it.
And I said, you know what? I agree with you. I was like, because, my initial pitch when they talked about doing a Black Panther movie with what to do for a sequel. Mine was set it during the blip.
Right.
That was my initial thought, and then when they presented this story, I'm like, okay, and then after seeing it, I was like, all right, I can get behind this. Like, I think they did a very elegant way of creating a theme of grief.
Right.
So that we, the audience, were able to go through our grief the same as the characters, for not just the loss of the character, but the loss of the person and the heart. And I feel like in a way, this movie is about reestablishing the heart of Wakanda.
It's true.
So
it's true.
Yeah, I told you, hard-hitting questions here.
I like it.
Now, to the more fun stuff. So as Victor had said, Victor is a comics creator. I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey from being comic fan to creator.
So I have a very long version. I'll give you the somewhat, truncated version. So when I got into comics, it kind of opened up a whole new world to me, not just in reading, but like I found out that my dad's side of the family was super nerdy as well. And I didn't know that. Like 10 years of my life, they were the sports guys. They were, big football players, basketball fans. Like that's what I knew them as. And I was a very skinny, frail little kid who wasn't really about playing outside. So I wasn't a sports guy, not at all. And so I start talking about comics all of a sudden. I find out like my dad is a nerd and was into comics growing up. And I'm like, wait, what, you? Like, what do you mean? Like, no way. I found out 3 of my uncles can draw, and like they are very keen to, support me and my interest in starting to draw and create characters and stuff like that. And the youngest of my uncles, my Uncle Mark, he kind of was the one that really kind of looked at it and said, we wanted to do stuff like this when we were growing up, but, at the time in the, 60s and 70s, you had to live in New York in order to make comics. And, we're all in Columbus, Ohio. So there's no way for us to actually do this, but I think you will figure it out. You will find a way to be a part of this stuff, and you'll do what we were never able to do. And, he was very supportive, very encouraging of me, drawing and even in my fledgling stage where I was really bad at it. But he would still, be so supportive. Within the next year, he was a victim of violent crime and he died. Mm. And it was my Batman by Candlelight, Peter Parker moment where I pledged that I was going to make something of myself in the comic book industry in honor of my uncle. And that kind of guided me from the point where I was, 11 years old on. So, I went deeper into reading comics, reading all the comics that I could, trying different styles out, different types of comics, understanding how they work, like really kind of like devoting myself to that. It guided me through middle school into high school, where I went to Fort Hayes, which is a Arts Impact high school. I went to their vocational center for commercial art. So like everything was all geared towards me making comics, specifically drawing them. And that was my huge focus for many, 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 many years. You sound like you were going to ask me a question.
No, I'm in.
Oh, okay. No worries. So like while I was in high school, I met Daryl Banks, who co-created Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern. Like I was really entrenched in this. Like I met other people that were local, that were creatives. Big shout out to Fonzie Davis. Like lots of opportunity there. And when I graduated, I had intended to go to Savannah College of Art and Design. It was at the time, the only school that I knew of that you could earn up to a master's degree in sequential arts illustration. And so that's where I wanted to go. And I actually didn't get a scholarship to go. And instead, I was given a scholarship to go to CCAD, Columbus College of Art and Design. Even though they didn't have a program for comics, I was like, okay, well, I got more money to go here. And that's where I went. They had a comic book arts class. And this is so funny because the teacher has claimed me as their student since. Like they've sworn up and down and told people like, oh, he was in my class. I never took his class. Never. And here's what happened. So my freshman year of college, I'm showing him sketches, right? And really where I was in my creative venture was I needed to be torn down and told that I wasn't the best so that I could learn something. Cause there was a point where in my high school career, nobody else was doing comics like I was. So I was the quote unquote best comic book guy, but that can only serve me so long, because then I'm not challenged. I'm not trying new things. Like, I wanted somebody that could just crush me and be like, okay, now I'm going to show you some new stuff. And when I showed him some sketches, he was just so, man, I can't wait for you to be in my class. It's going to be so great. And I felt like he was way too supportive of like a fan and wasn't going to teach me anything. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. Like, I knew that while I have some skill in drawing, I was losing my love of it. And the idea of being challenged to do it was what was going to like reinvigorate me into, you know, wanting to be a better artist. And when my teacher wasn't going to bring me that challenge, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't have that personal stake in myself to just make myself better. So I really don't know that I want to draw anymore. And I kind of had this like moment of like, well, I did say I was going to do something in comics for my uncle. And if I don't draw, what will I do? And I realized that the entire time that I was doing this, I was telling stories. Writing is what actually was the thing that I loved the most. And so I kind of like turned it around and was like, okay, well, I can draw and I can use that understanding of how, images and pages are put together to be a better writer. And so maybe that's what I should do. And that's what I've done. So I'm a writer by trade, publisher. I can draw, but I hate doing it. So I will actively hire other people to bring my stories to life visually. And it's funny because it never fails. Whenever I work with somebody brand new, they always come back with the idea that, man, you know how to really like paint a picture with your words. And I'm like, that's because I know what it is that you need to hear, because I can draw. I just don't like doing it. So, in that regard, I can speak your language better. And really, it's a matter of giving you the best tools for you to use so that when you interpret that and give it back to me, it's better than even I can think of, because you're in your zone and I'm encouraging you to speak your language with your art. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And I launched my own publishing imprint in 2010 called Vantage In-House Productions. And since then, we have launched I believe it's 8 titles with over 30 issues that I've personally written in the small press market.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, first of all, it's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I was going to get there. I find that I say that a lot. I'm getting there. Now, with your drawing, okay. Yep. So about what time frame were you at CCAD?
It was year 2000. So I graduated in 2000. So that fall 2000 into 2001, I was there. Okay.
I was just trying, because like I went to Columbus State for a little bit, and I had a friend that went over to CCAD, and I visited over there a couple times.
Yeah,
just kind of curious. Now, when you create a character, do you do your first initial sketch, like to just kind of have the character, so you have like a visual representation that you present to the artist, or do you just kind of describe it and let the artist go with it now?
I've done both. More often than not now, particularly if I'm not sharing ownership credit with the artist, I will draw them first. So there are artists that get, my measly little sketches and get to interpret that in their own way. But yeah, like it depends on what the IP cut is going to be. And that's kind of one of those business moves where if I know that I'm sharing ownership with an artist, then I'm going to create a lot less to kind of give value and worth to what I'm giving them in terms of their side of things. So, for the series, The Samaritan, the title character Smith, I actually created what Smith looked like and put him in an ad in a book that I had done all the artwork for. But all the other characters I didn't create. And so Ren McKenzie, my brother on that one, he has ownership because of that series. He created visually so many different characters because all I had for them were descriptions. That's all I had written up. The main character, Smith, does appear in other Vantage In-House books, but that's, in terms of breakdown, that's why Ren gets 50% ownership of that series versus owning Smith. Smith is a different, character. But everybody else, he definitely, brought to life. And it was just a matter of me describing what these people look like. And he was like, okay, well, this is what that is. And I'm like, yep, that's it right there.
Now, with your Vantage In-House, is it like a one shared universe, or do they connect to each other?
Such a great question. Initially, they were all separate stories. When I first created them, I just had stories I wanted to tell. And what I found, which was interesting, was as I started having more and more books on my table, I had people asking if they were connected. And it wasn't my intention, but then like as storytelling starts to happen, I started seeing places where the stories could connect. And that's kind of like, I was like, oh, well, I guess this could happen here. And ooh, what if this happened here? And so over time, I have found ways to connect all of these different titles into one shared multiverse.
Cool. And I've read a few. I have a few. Sadly, this is hard to say.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw I posted my it's life. My wife's one of her good friends is in the hospital.
Oh no.
And we were watching her dog, and the dog was in our bedroom, and we took the kids out to grab dinner, and the way our house is laid out, there's a door to my office, my room,
right,
connected to our bedroom. He freaked out. He popped the it wasn't locked real good. So he popped in here and he tore up about 4 long boxes full of comics. The majority of it was Batman comics. And then my short box that had more of I have a whole box that's like indie comics that I pick up at conventions, like, not main titles that I like to keep together. And the comics that I had purchased from you were in there because I was going to pull them back out.
We'll have to replace those.
Yeah. And my wife, I'm going to send you the picture and everything. My wife was like, I'm so sorry. And, I was angry, but I was at that anger point where I just went quiet.
I get that.
Like, I didn't say anything. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to be mad. I know that this is life, and I understand what's going on right now.
But it still hurts.
Yeah, it does. Some of them I had to throw away because the dog messed on them. And then I cleaned some off and I put them to the side, and I haven't gone through all of them yet.
Okay.
To see what's missing, what's not. Like, I really haven't had the heart to sit down and start that process yet.
I get that.
Because I remember one of the comics that Vantage put out that I had bought, and I'm drawing a blank, and I do apologize.
That's all right.
Because it was a female superhero.
It's Somewhere I Belong. It's an Origins Unknown series.
And I had that one. I was going to dig that back out. And I was just like, but I've enjoyed, like, I'll say this. Every convention that I go to, you will find Victor set up there. You will find, and recently I ran into him at Cincinnati Comic Expo. And I'll, run into him here shortly because I'm doing a panel at GalaxyCon.
Awesome.
So I'll be back there, and I'll see you there. But you can always find him and his comics creating team and everything set up there with some really great books. I mean, everything I've read, and, one thing that my wife and I have talked about and we've kind of pledged is our new goal is to save up more money to go to cons to buy more indie work.
Awesome.
Because what we've found is we're finding unique art and books and things that are fascinating that we want, because we're really big on supporting local, like even, local businesses and everything that we can. So when she came down for CincyCon with me, we kind of made this idea, like, we want to save up more money so that we can buy more local indie stuff to support that, because that's really it's I don't say it's more important, but there's a stronger impact I feel that it can really help.
No, that's very true. That's very, very true. It's easier to support characters that so when you take the time to support characters that are not as well known, it means so much more to the creators themselves. What you've done. I mean, if you buy, no disrespect to the fantastic creators that are out there, but they don't necessarily get to see your enjoyment if you buy the next issue of Batman,
Right. Yeah.
They don't get to see that. But if you buy, a self-published title, chances are you're buying it from the creative team, and they get to see an appreciation for their work, and that is invaluable.
And I mean, just for someone who has created and done things, musically as well as other forms, having someone that immediate connection or having someone be able to message you back and appreciate your work is, like you said, invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, tell us about some of the characters that you have, and then also where we as an audience can get your books other than at a con. And then also, what I want to ask you: do you have a local comic shop in Columbus?
I do.
You go to?
Yes, indeed.
Those are my 3 questions.
Okay, so some of the characters that I've created, we'll start off with the different titles because I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
So starting off with the all ages side, we have Wonder Care presents the Kinderguardians that I do with Justin Castaneda. And it is Muppet Babies meets the Justice League. It's a team of little kid superheroes that are going to a special school that have very fun, age-appropriate adventures along the way. So while they're learning how to be the heroes of tomorrow, they are learning how to be a team and fighting sleep monsters, or traveling to parallel worlds and finding doppelgangers of themselves. Like they're having an absolute blast. It's a full-on Silver Age, vibe to it. That's really, really fun. So highly recommend that one.
Well, I was going to say, I saw that advertised on your website.
Yes.
I don't remember seeing it at the booth, but I was really busy when I was in Cincy. It's on my list to buy because that's one I want to get because I would think my daughter would like.
Of course. Absolutely.
So it's on my to get list here in December.
Not a problem. Yeah, we actually have one full trade paperback in stock right now, and the second trade paperback, hopefully I should be getting an update on that one in the next couple of days. And fingers crossed that we'll have it at GalaxyCon because I would love to premiere it there because that would be fantastic. Then we have our teen-centric stuff with Origins Unknown. There are 6 stories within the Origins Unknown anthology series, and the only one of them so far has actually been produced into a sequel series called Point of Authority Family Ties. That one takes its tone. Well, first, let me go back. Origins Unknown I did with Jacob Newell. He did a fantastic job with those stories. And then with Point of Authority, I'm doing with Adam Fields and Kevin Anthony DeCastro. We are extending that story, and it's blowing the doors off of all the creative ventures that I'm doing right now. Like, it's a gorgeous looking book. The story itself is just dynamic and topsy-turvy and just will keep you on edge. It's wonderful. Let's see. After that, we're going into our young adult line, which would be The Trouble with Love, which I just recently sent you.
Yeah,
that one.
I was going to get into that here.
Yes. That one is a very powerful, pivotal story featuring our character Apex Prime. He's a Superman analog. The crux of the story is he has a wife and a family, but then falls in love with someone else, and years later has to answer, why did he leave his family behind when his son comes asking questions? And this one has become kind of the anchor to the multiverse that I've built. This is the one that has the story piece where so many different parts and pieces can intersect. And it's the second story. It was the first story that I ever did a sequel to called Never Too Late. And we're currently in production of that 4-issue miniseries. Issues 1 and 2 are already out. Issue 3 will be sent off to be colored within the next couple of weeks. And I'm supposed to get the layouts for issue 4 shortly. So that one's going to be a huge, huge piece. That one's going to showcase how interconnected everything is and just blow people's minds. It's a very emotional story. It's even The Trouble with Love is super emotional. And then we get even deeper with Never Too Late. It gets even more intense. I can't even tell you like what Never Too Late is about without spoiling.
Don't.
Yeah, I can't. But it's so good. It's so good.
I will say, because I read that.
Yes.
And since we're talking about, and I didn't know what it was going in.
Of course.
You sent it to me, and I was like, okay, I read the title. I'm like, okay, Trouble with Love. And I'm reading it, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wow. And then, like, I came home, and I was like, hey, I got to read the comic Victor sent me. And we started talking about it.
Ooh, I love that.
And then I started just talking about her, like, things with this. Like, I was like, I'm very curious to where they can go with this because of the layers and like the real world and like I don't want to give anything away, but we started hitting on the themes and discussing it amongst ourselves about it, and it was a really good discussion. And I was like,
That's awesome.
I wanted to ask you, did it come from a really personal place?
Very personal.
Because it feels like it comes from that type of a place. And like I said, I don't want to spoil.
No.
I really want people to experience it much like I did. So
it's definitely a super personal place. What I can say is that I am currently working on an adaptation of it. Last year, I signed a first look deal with a company called Aha Media. And so they signed everything under my imprint. So all the things that I've published already and anything that I'm going to publish under my imprint is up for a first look deal to be made into a movie, cartoon, or whatever other media. And upon their suggestion, when it comes to The Trouble with Love, I'm exploring how to turn it into a stage play. And so I'm really excited about digging deeper into the drama behind the story. And actually, because I wrote that very early in my Vantage in-house career. And now that I've got, a solid decade under me from writing that, I see where I could have written certain parts, I don't want to say better, but the
deeper,
or the focus would be different.
Okay.
who I'm telling the story or whose point of view I'm telling it from would be different. And recognizing that has influenced how I'm approaching the stage play, which has been phenomenal. It's not often that, a person can write something and then come back to it years later and go, oh, I could see a totally different take on this. It's still the same story, but this now, if I tell it this way, it hits even harder, or it becomes something even deeper and better. And I had a great conversation, taking it back to Kevin Smith. Mark Bernardin, he did a Kickstarter for his movie Splinter. And one of the rewards was getting like a consultation session with him. And so I got that reward. And so I sent him The Trouble with Love, and he read it. And we had like a good hour of talking about what to do with this story. And we just kind of workshopped it. And he, first of all, was like, I don't have notes for this. Like, this is a dope story. And I actually had to read it twice once I got to the end and read your note on the end. And then I had to go back and read it again. He's like, this was really good, which was a huge, huge compliment. I love him to death for that.
I always loved his perspective on writing. And
he's so good.
When he would appear on Kevin's show, like I prefer to listen to him talk over Kevin.
I get it. I mean, Mark is a brilliant thinker, and what he comes up with is just great. So to have those moments with him was amazing. And when I told him I was approaching this from a stage play, he's like, that's exciting. So definitely I want people to look out for that one, because I think that'll be a big one. Just to round out the workload, I have to give a shout out to Brian Moss, who I did Old Crazy and the 40 Ounces of Death with. This one is a love letter to Quentin Tarantino and Sam Jackson movies. And it's a challenge of sorts, actually, because, okay, so forgive the reference, but there's a movie called Leonard Part 6 starring Bill Cosby. Have you ever heard of this?
I feel like I have, because I did used to work at Blockbuster.
Okay, so the whole idea behind Leonard Part 6 is it's like a black James Bond. The trick to it, though, is with Part 6, they act as though there are 5 other parts that have happened and built a continuity for you to understand. The trick of it, though, is there's only the 6th movie. Like, that's the only one that actually exists.
Okay,
so
now I remember hearing about it, because I was like, that rings something. Okay.
Yes. So with Old Crazy, we only produced book 4 of a 4-part story. And my challenge was, I wanted to see what you absolutely needed in order to read a story and enjoy it. Because back in the day, back before comic shops, in the newsstand era, you could get into like a story but never find the next parts and pieces. Like you didn't necessarily find books sequentially, so you just kind of had to get them and read them and enjoy what you could. So I wanted to explore, could I create a story that could do that? And with Brian, we totally did. It's fantastic. We do actually have a synopsis for what happens in 1 through 3. And I even went as far as to make, I don't want to call them fake trade paperbacks, but they are trade paperbacks of 1, 2, and 3 that are totally blank. and the challenge is for you to write your own versions of what happens in 1, 2, and 3. You know where it goes with 4, but you get to say how exactly we get there with these, little rubric ideas.
Wow, that's exciting.
Thank you.
Especially if you're a creative person and you're a writer and you're a storyteller and you think like that. Like that's an exciting, okay, here's the end of the story. Now, how do I get there?
And then last but certainly not least, I got to give a shout out to the Samaritan series that I did with Ren. The first 7 issues I did with Ren McKenzie. The last one, issue 8, I did with Jean-Paul Deschung. Again, the idea is a superhero that moves into a crime-ridden neighborhood and starts systematically cleaning it up. Very hands-on, very aggressive. I want to warn everybody: it is not the Sly Stallone movie. It's got nothing to do with that. Not at all.
I remember, dude. Okay, when they announced that movie, before I just saw the superhero movie, I was like, "Did Victor get a movie made?" I had immediately had a pump. And then I looked into it. And I was like, Sliced, that's not his character.
Yeah, no, it's not mine. It's not.
And then I was like, dang it, they ripped off his name.
No, see, they didn't even listen. And it's so funny. Once the announcement was made, and let alone the build up to the release, I got at least 2 to 3 people a day messaging me like, "Is this yours?" And I'm like, "No, it's not mine." Did they steal? No, they didn't steal anything from me. Big shout out to Bragi Schrute, who was the writer creator of that series. Big shout out to Mark, who did the artwork for that one. I am aware of that series. Mad respect to them. Congratulations to them for doing it. It has nothing to do with mine. There are just some bare basic visual similarities, but they're super small. Like the idea of a superhero wearing a hoodie, that's not overtly unique,
that was kind of teased by M. Night Shyamalan. Even tried to do that.
That is literally one of the places where I got it. So yes, because I said
everybody in Smallville wear a hoodie.
Literally everybody. Somebody save me. That's just what it is. Arrow, they did it. It was all over the place. So that part, I'm like, nah, it's not the same. If there is anything that was close, it would be the first 3 episodes of Luke Cage on Marvel or Netflix. That's the closest. But even then, and I do think that they did use my work a little bit. And the reason why I say that is so crazy. In the second episode, there's a guy getting his hair cut in the barbershop, right? And as he leaves, the barber's like, "All right, Victor, have a good one." This is not a recurring character. So I can't understand the rationale of them giving him a name if it wasn't a little nod, poke, wink, wink. Hey, we did actually use your book. And I've been saying that for years. So hopefully they don't get mad at me and come sue me for it. Because we can take that to court. I don't mind. I'm like, yes, you guys gave me a shout out.
I want to read your book, and I want to rewatch that episode.
I'm telling you, you'll love it. You'll be able to see it. Because I've been saying for a while that Luke Cage is like a multi-million-dollar commercial for my series, and I just didn't have to pay for it. So it works for me.
Sweet. It makes me want to read your book more.
Yes,
just because to see it, but I wanted to reread it in a long time too. Let's see. Creator wise, inspired. What are you mentioned this on Twitter? We were talking. Who is a creator that has inspired you that you kind of look to maybe for mentorship or just kind of as the example of the type of company or?
First and foremost, is Mark Miller.
I just wanted to get that. I didn't want to say
that. Yeah, without question. Mark is creatively, he's a voice that I respond well to all the time. And just the way that he approaches storytelling, he always comes at it where there's a surprise. And you can even know that there's a surprise. And that's not the thing that makes you want to keep reading. It's you want to see what the surprise is. And when you can understand the magic and still be wowed, that's a skill. Without question, that's a skill. When it comes to the business of comics, he's one of the first to do it better than everybody. With all due respect to Stan Lee, who I think is the only other person that you can adequately compare him to, Mark has created something phenomenal with his voice and his output and even the translations of his work. Mark is my guy. Big shout out to him. And I appreciate the fact that he has opened up his arms to embrace me as a fan and as kind of a devotee of what he does, and will share his wisdom with me. He's an awesome, awesome guy. It's the best part of all things. I will also give some love to Robert Kirkman too. I got big love for Robbie.
I was going to say with Mark, like you were saying, I feel like one of his biggest strengths is a lot of other, like even the Image comic people, like Todd McFarlane, you think of Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead. They all had their book, you know, but Mark Millar has written a lot. He's created a lot of characters, a lot of stories. I mean, you just get on Millar World and you'll see, you know, how he created this whole universe. You know, you asked me about characters, and like I really enjoyed reading his Jupiter series, and I actually just reread it recently because I got the newest trade, the Requiem. You know, there's one more trade about to come out sometime.
Can't wait.
And you know, because I reread it before the show. Did you watch the show?
Oh, of course, of course.
What I found fascinating about the show is the show was a prequel to the first book, and a prequel to the second book.
It's so interesting. So when it comes to the Jupiter series, it's got a lot of funky bouncing.
It does, because like I was trying to tell my wife, like when it was like Jupiter's Legacy, and then it was like Jupiter's Inner Circle. Now it's all they've put it all together
right
now under one banner if you buy the trades now. But it's like you have the story of like their early days when they were a team, and then you have the story of the Utopian as an old man with his children and their story. And then the show told their origin, and then like the moment before the first book about the older Utopian. So it's really interesting that you can watch the show and read the books, and they're all one story without the show actually adapting the book.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the things that Mark does really well is he gives fertile ground to the potential. Like he establishes that there's a lot of potential in this story, but he doesn't explain it all so that if somebody does want to translate it into film or something, they have something that they can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was very sad that show was canceled. I was very upset. I kind of wanted to see where they were going to take it, to see if they would have done the full on story. Because after it was said it was canceled, then I had to tell my wife, okay, so this is what happens. And her jaw just kind of dropped as I like told her and showed her the book. She's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah.
I think the concept of canceling, particularly with that title, is fluid. That's my statement. I think that in a certain place, space, they find the right people, they'll bring it right back and they'll pick it up, just like Doctor Who. You know, it had a hiatus for a long time, and then we came back with Christopher Eccleston, and look at where we are now.
Yeah, speaking of Doctor Who, my friend has gotten really hard into it.
Oh, word.
And he came over the other night, and we watched the movie, The Strange Adventures in Time and Space.
Nice.
That was kind of like the story of the setup. And then we started watching some episodes of the original Doctor from the
That's
the
awesome.
60s. So we started watching that, and he's going through this. He's creating me a list of early Doctors to go in and watch a few episodes of each Doctor.
Okay.
And everything. Because I've seen enough to like around, but I've never really, it's one of those things I've always kind of wanted to get back and do and watch it all, but I'm always kind of like, there's so much.
I mean, that is true, man. That is definitely true. And
how they've really, like, we talked about how the show is, the whole regeneration thing was the smartest thing they've ever did.
Yep.
Because it was the best way to keep a story alive and keep going without actually ever rebooting it.
Exactly.
You're always soft rebooting it in continuity.
Every single time. Genius.
And yeah, it is. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you're the hardest working man in comics. You have a life, you have kids, I got kids. But I've been wanting to do this with you for a while because I love talking to creators. I love talking to, people who get to do this and have, their work out there. One of the coolest things about Victor, for anyone listening, is Victor does a lot of convention work, and not only for his own stuff, but he does a lot of panels.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find him moderating and hosting. So he's got to meet a lot of people. And I know that you're full of stories.
Oh, I got a couple.
And it's always fascinating to me, just all the, the people that you got to meet. And we'll have to chat about that more. And you said you're going to be at GalaxyCon. I think last two things we'll kind of wrap up here. What's your home store here in Columbus, and where can people buy your work?
Sure. So my home store is Comic Town, literally on the other side of town from where I live. I'm on the south side near Obetz, and this is up near Polaris / Delaware.
You're in Obetz?
Yeah.
What? Why did I not know that?
Yeah, I'm in an area called Southfield, so not quite Obetz, but close.
Well, okay, so I went to Hamilton Township High School.
Oh, you're like right around the corner.
Yeah, and I worked at Dairy Queen in Obetz. Was my first job.
Oh my God! Like I literally passed that every week on our way to Chipotle. Like, so, no joke.
That was, and that whole area has been changed so much since the annex and all that.
True.
And I haven't been over there like on that part in such a long time that. So it's just when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, did I know that? I don't think I knew that. Because like I had friends that lived in Reese, I lived in Obetz, and if you go right outside, what is it called? It's right there off Rathmill, Hamilton. I think it was Hamilton Lakes.
Yeah,
it was the development that I lived in when I lived up in Columbus.
Okay,
so
nice.
Small world, people.
It gets smaller every day. Every day.
So Comic Town wasn't that the one that was up by Easton that moved?
So there was one in Easton. The original site was on Morse Road. It was there for like 25 years. And they 5 years ago, moved to a larger space off of Dilmont Road, off of 23. So that's how high up High Street it is. Like you got to call it 23 again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just north of 270 is where it is. And I do my show Black, White, and Red all over there. Absolutely love, big shout out to Ryan, big shout out to Scott, Lou, the whole crew. That's my shop. I love those guys.
See, I've been wanting to get back up to that one because I haven't been to it since it moved. Like last time I was up, I can't believe it's been 5 years, but
it's been 5 years, man.
Looking at the journey of life, like, because my if I had to pick a local shop in Columbus was Pack Rat.
Okay.
Because I used to work up by Pack Rat.
Yeah.
And so on my lunch break, I would go pick up my comics or go buy some comics. And that became kind of my favorite go-to shop in the Columbus area. Okay.
No, that's no problem with that one. Big shout out to Jamie and Teresa. That's again, like when you are this guy in comics, like everybody. So I don't know that there is a shop in Columbus that I don't know. That's one of those fun parts and pieces of it. In terms of where people can find my stuff, definitely you can find my stuff at Comic Town. You can actually find some of my books at Laughing Ogre because they are another big supporter of me if you're in the Clintonville area. I am working on a print-on-demand partnership with Kablam and their print side, Indie Planet. So there are a couple of my books that are up there now. We're working on putting everything up there. Part of the reason for that is because it was getting a little difficult to keep track of orders for people. And so what I would prefer is to have a print on demand outlet where you can, I'm promoting it and you go there and they will print off a fresh copy, send it to you. It'll be in pristine mint condition and you can find me at a show and I'll sign it, but you don't have to worry about, waiting for me to get something printed, signed, and sent to you. You can just get it, on a semi-regular basis. So that's what we're working for. So keep looking at indieplanet.com, INDY planet.com. You can definitely check stuff out there.
All right. That's awesome because, like I said, I'll probably see you at GalaxyCon before I'll get a chance to get to the store.
No worries. No worries.
And I want to buy that book for my daughter. All right. So where can people find you online? Like if they wanted to give you a shout out or anything, after listening to this, where can they find you?
So I'm at Vantage In-House on all forms of social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that goodness. If you go to vantageinhouse.com, you can see more about my publishing. If you are interested in making comics, I have a brand called You Create Comics. That's the letter U, CRE, the number 8, comics.com, where we have programming that we do in schools. We have product lines where if you're a writer, we've got stuff for you. If you're an artist, we have stuff for you. If you're just a kid that wants to play around and survey what it means to make comics, we have stuff for you. You Create is all about bringing comics into the classroom and empowering people right now to make their dreams come true when it comes to being a creative. No more when I grow up. We want you to do it right now. You can also find my clothing line, Geeking, which we actually just launched a huge collaboration between Geeking and Vantage In-House, where we're going to do some Vantage In-House themed apparel and merch. That one is through TeePublic. So if you go to Geeking Official, that's our store name, and just look for me anywhere, everywhere, because I'm there.
Sounds about right. Feels like it.
Absolutely.
It feels like every time I turn around, it's something with comics. Like, oh, hey, there you are.
Absolutely. That's the way I do it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you here soon. I look forward to picking up some books, and I encourage all the listeners to just check out the website, check out his stuff. It really is, the comic is fans creating comics of quality. I say that because I've read indie comics before where you're like, that's, but no, Victor's got that spark. That's something.
Thank you.
And that's why I wanted to chat with him for a long time. And life, people, life.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
Well, thank you for being here on Krypton Report, Victor. Take care, man, and I'll see you soon.
You too.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough Super Talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our information. $1 a month. You'll get extra special content that you don't get on the main show, like movie commentaries and whatever else comes out of our mouths. So check it out, patreon.com/Krypton Report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
We're going to press pause and hear a few words from our other podcasts on Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us, and then listen in.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.